Friends, gather around and listen closely, because I am about to tell you a story about a massive, terrible, and highly lucrative conspiracy regarding the very concept of cleanliness in our modern society. And the mastermind behind this grand illusion is none other than the giant chemical corporations, the pharmaceutical empires, and the clever advertising executives of the mid-20th century. I am joking, of course, but also, I am completely serious. Today, we are reopening the secret. Dust-covered files on the biggest, most successful corporate smear campaign of the 1960s. The primary victim of this relentless propaganda, your sweet, innocent, penny-pinching old grandmother. And the forbidden, highly dangerous weapon she wielded in her kitchen, it was just a cheap, unassuming, completely innocent little brown bottle right under her sink. I am talking about the humble 3% hydrogen peroxide. For the better part of 50 years, the men in sharp suits sitting in high-rise boardrooms spent millions upon millions of advertising dollars trying to convince your grandmother that this little brown bottle was obsolete. They wanted her to believe it was only good for a scraped knee on a playground. And even then, they argued it was too old-fashioned. They desperately needed her to believe that in order to be a good, modern housewife, she needed to march down to the supermarket and buy 15 different brightly colored plastic spray bottles. They wanted her buying a blue liquid for the glass, a green liquid for the bathroom, a yellow powder for the kitchen sink, and a purple gel for the laundry. But your grandmother did not care about their clever television commercials. She did not care about the shiny magazine spreads. She knew a fundamental secret about household chemistry that modern science has only recently been forced to admit was absolutely true all along. Today, we are going to embark on an epic countdown of the 9 most brilliant hydrogen peroxide hacks that the multi-billion-dollar chemical companies desperately want you to forget forever. Number 9. Sanitizing wooden cutting boards. Let us travel back in time to the year 1962. The modern chemical industry was booming, pushing heavy-duty, chlorine-based bleaches for every single surface in the kitchen. But Grandma ignored them. After chopping raw chicken on her heavy wooden cutting board, she did not reach for the expensive toxic bleach. Instead, she simply poured a generous splash of 3% hydrogen peroxide directly onto the wood. Immediately, the board would start to sing. It bubbled up bright white, fizzing and popping like a miniature foam party right there on the kitchen counter. The medical experts and home economic columnists of that era shook their heads in severe disapproval. They claimed her method was unscientific, dangerous, and that she absolutely had to use stronger, branded chemical cleaners to keep her family safe from food poisoning. But the absolute reality, verified by food safety scientists decades later, is that hydrogen peroxide is a ruthless assassin when it comes to pathogens. As it fizzes, it is actively tearing apart the cellular walls of harmful bacteria like Salmonella and Escherichia coli. And the most beautiful part? Once it finishes destroying the bacteria, it completely breaks itself down into nothing but pure water and oxygen molecules. It leaves absolutely zero toxic chemical residue behind for your next piece of roast beef. The corporations hated this, because you cannot patent water and oxygen. Number 8. Washing fresh vegetables. Picture the grocery stores of the late 1950s and early 1960s. The post-war agricultural boom meant crops were being sprayed with brand new, highly synthetic chemical pesticides. The companies selling these agricultural chemicals certainly did not want consumers worrying about what was on the skin of their shiny red apples. When Grandma brought her produce home, she would fill her kitchen sink with cold water and mix in a solid quarter cup of hydrogen peroxide. She would let her tomatoes and leafy greens soak in this bubbling bath. The neighbors would look through the kitchen window and gossip, saying it looked like she was mixing a strange chemical cocktail for her garden plants. The general consensus, pushed by the grocery industry, was that a quick rinse under the tap was perfectly fine. But Grandma knew that plain water and oil-based pesticides do not mix. Today, exhaustive research from top-tier agricultural universities has completely vindicated her. Studies confirm that soaking your fruits and vegetables in a heavily diluted hydrogen peroxide bath removes significantly more chemical pesticide residue, dirt, and surface bacteria than just washing them with plain tap water. It oxidizes the chemical bonds of the pesticides, breaking them apart so they can be safely washed down the drain, leaving your salad entirely safe to eat. Number 7. The legendary foot fungus soak. The mid-20th century saw the rise of public swimming pools, community locker rooms, and closed-toe synthetic shoes. With these modern advancements came a modern annoying problem: athlete's foot. The big pharmaceutical corporations back then were having a field day. Heavily advertising, incredibly expensive. Tiny little tubes of foot fungus creams on black and white television sets across the country. They wanted people to feel embarrassed and ashamed, rushing to the pharmacy to hand over their hard-earned money. But Grandma refused to participate in this economic racket. When someone in the house had itchy feet, she simply brought out a large basin, filled it with warm water, and mixed in 3 generous tablespoons of hydrogen peroxide for every gallon of water. She would have the afflicted person sit there and soak their feet for 30 deeply relaxing minutes. The corporate executives laughed and called this a silly, ineffective folk remedy passed down by uneducated peasants. However, the indisputable biological truth is that hydrogen peroxide creates an intensely oxygen-rich environment in the water. The specific types of fungi that cause athletes' foot and thick, yellow toenails are strictly anaerobic organisms. That is a fancy scientific way of saying they absolutely hate oxygen. When exposed to the oxygen bomb of Grandma's foot bath, the fungi literally cannot survive. They die off completely and peel away, leaving behind clean, healthy, completely fungus-free feet, all without spending a small fortune on a tiny tube of commercial cream. Number 6. The ultimate oxygenating mouthwash, halitosis. That is the scary-sounding medical term that advertising agencies literally popularized in the 1920s and 30s just to sell mouthwash. By the 1960s, the market was flooded with giant bottles of neon green and bright blue liquids that burned your mouth with harsh alcohols and artificial flavorings. The experts in the glossy magazines shook their heads at anyone doing anything different, insisting you must use a commercially formulated .com, scientifically branded mouthwash to be a socially acceptable human being. Grandma, ever the skeptic of spending money on colored water, simply took her little brown bottle, diluted the hydrogen peroxide with plain tap water in a strict 1-to-1 ratio, and swished it around in her mouth for exactly 60 seconds every morning. She knew the secret. And today, modern holistic dentistry actually highly recommends using diluted hydrogen peroxide as an incredibly effective treatment for gingivitis, bleeding gums, and chronic bad breath. The mechanics are beautifully simple. The bad breath in your mouth is not caused by the garlic you ate. It is caused by anaerobic bacteria hiding in the deep pockets of your gums, producing sulfur compounds. When you swish the diluted peroxide, the oxygen rapidly expands into those gum pockets and completely destroys those odor-causing bacteria on contact. It also acts as a gentle, natural bleaching agent for your teeth over time. You just have to remember the golden rule: only swish. Absolutely never swallow it. The big oral care corporations lost a massive amount of potential revenue because of this one little swishing trick. Number 5. Brightening and rescuing laundry. In the booming consumer culture of the 1960s, heavy-duty chlorine bleach was the absolute king of the laundry room. It was being heavily advertised on every channel and in every newspaper. Housewives were told they needed to pour this harsh, noxious-smelling chemical into their washing machines to prove they were good caretakers. But chlorine bleach has a dark side. It is incredibly corrosive. It eats away at the cotton fibers, turning white shirts brittle and eventually causing them to take on a permanent, dingy yellow hue. Grandma absolutely refused to let chlorine anywhere near her family's good Sunday clothes. Instead, she quietly poured 1 full cup of 3% hydrogen peroxide straight into the washing machine drum, along with her regular soap. It miraculously whitened her whites, safely removed organic stains like blood and grass, and actually brightened her colored fabrics without destroying a single thread of the material. Today, highly educated textile scientists and environmentalists alike confirm that hydrogen peroxide is a far superior, gentle, biodegradable oxidizing bleach. unlike chlorine, which creates toxic byproducts that pollute our waterways and harm aquatic life. Hydrogen peroxide simply does its job, lifting the stains, and then quietly biodegrades back into the earth as water and oxygen. It is far better for your expensive clothes, significantly better for the environment, and it costs a fraction of the price of branded color-safe bleaches. Number 4. Treating the dreaded plant root rot. The 1970s brought a massive houseplant craze to the Western world. Everyone had ferns, spider plants, and monsteras filling their living rooms. But with all those indoor plants came the inevitable consequence of over-enthusiastic care, overwatering. People were drowning their plants, turning the soil into a swampy, foul-smelling mess. The leaves would droop, turn yellow, and die. The gardening companies at the time capitalized on this tragedy. They sold highly expensive, chemically complex, synthetic fungicides and root hormone treatments, claiming it was the only way to save a dying potted plant. They called Grandma's alternative methods primitive and barbaric. But what did Grandma do? She calmly walked to her medicine cabinet, fetched her trusty brown bottle, and mixed exactly 1 tablespoon of hydrogen peroxide into 1 cup of room-temperature water. She then watered her wilting, dying plants with this very specific mixture on a microscopic, biological level. The genius of this is staggering. Root rot is not just the root being too wet. It is actually caused by opportunistic pathogenic fungi and bacteria that thrive specifically in waterlogged, heavily oxygen-deprived soil. When the plant roots cannot breathe, they rot. When Grandma poured her hydrogen peroxide mixture into the dirt, the chemical reaction instantly released millions of tiny oxygen bubbles directly into the suffocating root zone. This massive rush of pure oxygen instantly killed the anaerobic pathogens causing the rot, while simultaneously delivering life-saving, breathable oxygen directly to the drowning plant roots. It is a miraculous, instantaneous rescue treatment that modern botanists and master gardeners use to this day, completely bypassing the expensive gardening center chemicals. Number 3. Eliminating stubborn, musty laundry odors. Every household knows this specific struggle. The damp bath towels left crumpled on the bathroom floor by a teenager, or the gym clothes that sat in the hamper just a little too long. They develop a sour, damp, incredibly persistent musty smell that seems impossible to wash out. In the late 20th century, the massive household goods corporations introduced highly perfumed liquid fabric softeners and dryer sheets. Their advertising departments loudly proclaimed that you absolutely had to use their artificially scented products to remove the terrible mildew smells from your family's towels. But this was a total chemical lie. In reality, liquid fabric softener does not kill mildew or remove odors at all. It simply coats the fabric fibers in a thick layer of animal fats and artificial perfumes, merely masking the terrible smell under a heavy blanket of synthetic lavender. After a few hours, the musty smell always comes creeping back. Grandma knew you could not just cover up a problem. You had to destroy it. If the bath towels smelled sour, she tossed them into a large metal bucket, filled it with boiling hot water, and poured in 1 whole cup of hydrogen peroxide. She let them soak in this steaming, bubbling cauldron for a full 30 minutes before running them through a normal wash cycle. The science here is undeniable. The hydrogen peroxide physically penetrates deep into the microscopic weave of the cotton fibers. It finds the living mold and mildew spores hiding deep inside, and it aggressively oxidizes them until they are completely destroyed at the cellular level. When the towels came out of the wash, they did not smell like fake flowers. They smelled like absolutely nothing. They smelled like pure, clean air. Number 2. The ultimate organic garden fungus spray. Gardening is a delicate balance of nature, and sometimes, nature gets out of hand. Powdery mildew, black spot, and rust are fungal diseases that can completely decimate a prize-winning tomato crop or a beautiful rose bush in a matter of days. The massive chemical and agricultural companies of the era were thrilled to provide the solution. They manufactured and sold retail pesticides and fungicides that were so incredibly strong and toxic that they required the user to wear heavy rubber gloves and a mask just to apply them to their own backyard garden. These chemicals did not discriminate. They killed the bad fungus, sewer, but they also killed the beneficial earthworms. They poisoned the soil microbiome. And they killed the bees and ladybugs that were essential to the garden's ecosystem. Grandma, fiercely protective of her garden and the creatures living in it, completely rejected these toxic sprays. Instead, she took an empty spray bottle, mixed 1 single tablespoon of hydrogen peroxide into 1 cup of plain water, and walked out to her garden early in the morning. She sprayed this gentle mixture directly onto the plant leaves that were covered in white powdery mildew. The chemical companies mocked this as a waste of time, but the diluted hydrogen peroxide creates a rapid, localized cell-destroying effect strictly on the fragile surface structure of the fungal spores. It burns the fungus away in seconds, but because it is incredibly unstable in sunlight, within a matter of minutes, that hydrogen peroxide rapidly breaks down and evaporates into plain water and atmospheric oxygen. It leaves absolutely zero heavy metals, no synthetic poisons, and no toxic chemical residue behind for the plant to absorb or for the bees to carry away. It is the absolute pinnacle of sustainable, organic agriculture. And she was doing it 50 years before the phrase organic gardening was even a popular marketing term. Number 1. The grand finale. The all-purpose household spray that systematically replaced dozens of expensive products. And here it is. My friends, the ultimate realization, the core philosophy, and the specific hack that truly drove the corporate executives into a state of absolute panic. When you looked under the kitchen sink of a thoroughly modern, consumer-driven household in the 1970s or 80s, you would find a chaotic, toxic rainbow of plastic. You would see 15 different bottles of highly specialized chemicals, each one explicitly marketed for a single, narrow chore. 1 expensive bottle for the glass windows, 1 harsh bottle for the toilet bowl, 1 foaming can for the oven, 1 blue spray for the countertops, 1 purple bottle for the floor. The corporations had successfully built their entire multi-billion-dollar business strategy on the psychological manipulation of convincing the American housewife that her home was a dangerous, contaminated zone, and that she needed to continuously purchase an endless army of highly specialized, toxic chemicals to keep her family safe. But then, you looked under your grandmother's sink. And what did you find? You found a single, lonely, incredibly cheap brown bottle. That 1 bottle of 3% hydrogen peroxide did absolutely everything we just talked about. She used it to disinfect her wooden cutting boards without poisoning her meat. She used it to wash the pesticides off her vegetables. She soaked her tired feet in it to cure fungal infections. She used it as a highly effective daily mouthwash for her gums. She poured it into her washing machine to keep her white bedsheets brilliantly bright without degrading the cotton. She used it to miraculously resurrect her dying, overwatered houseplants. She obliterated the deep-seated mold and mildew from the family bath towels. She protected her prize-winning roses from powdery mildew without harming a single honeybee. She did not need 15 different plastic bottles. She only needed 1. And that 1 bottle cost her roughly 30 cents at the local pharmacy. The sheer economics of this reality completely destroyed the entire strategy of the consumer cleaning industry. They could not stand the fact that a simple, naturally occurring chemical compound, one that leaves absolutely no toxic residue and costs mere pennies to produce, could vastly outperform their highly engineered, artificially colored, heavily perfumed, and incredibly expensive products. Grandma was not just a sweet old lady practicing silly, outdated folk magic or relying on old wives' tales. She was actively practicing advanced, applied chemistry way before modern science bothered to catch up and formally explain the molecular mechanisms behind her actions. She observed the world. She saw the fizzing reaction. She understood the power of oxidation. And she trusted the simple, undeniable results she saw with her own 2 eyes. She possessed a deep, practical wisdom that the modern world of aggressive advertising and hyperconsumption desperately tried to bury and make us forget. So, the next time you are standing in the cleaning aisle of a massive supermarket, staring blankly at a terrifying wall of brightly colored plastic bottles, and feeling completely overwhelmed by the sheer volume of toxic choices, I want you to stop. I want you to remember this countdown. The next time a fast-talking advertisement or a self-proclaimed modern expert tells you that something incredibly simple, totally natural, and incredibly cheap cannot possibly work just because it does not come in a fancy spray bottle with a clinical-sounding brand name. I want you to remember your grandmother's quiet, brilliant wisdom. If this deep dive into forgotten history helped you see through the corporate illusions and saved you some of your hard-earned money today, please hit the like button right now. The algorithm desperately needs your likes to break through the noise and push this vital, money-saving knowledge to more people who need to hear it. Please subscribe to the channel so you absolutely do not miss out on any more forgotten wisdom and historical truths that the modern world tries to hide from us. And most importantly, please drop a comment down below to let me know exactly which of Grandma's brilliant hydrogen peroxide hacks you are going to try in your own home first. I cannot wait to read your thoughts. And I will see you all in the very next video.